Bum, bum, bum. All right, so since we're running over, I'm going to be really quick. So a little bit of background. For the last 2 years, I have been really focused on building a startup, and I'm going to give a talk about that tomorrow. For various reasons, most of them falling under startup life. We had to wind down the company, so I found myself with some time on my hands. And I hate being bored. So I started pondering kind of the current state of things, and I started noticing some patterns, and I started thinking about, well, what are ways that I could try to improve the state of the world a little bit? And some of this, I think, comes from, like, I've got a daughter. She's in high school, almost done with high school, and I don't want to get into politics at all, but only to say I'm not entirely thrilled with the current state of the world, regardless of your political bent, and we'll leave it at that. So if you look at some recent-ish events, we've got things like Brexit, the recent election here in the States, for folks that maybe keep up in more international world. You've got the recent Dutch general election and the state coming up of the French presidential election here in the next couple of months. And regardless of where you fall on the political spectrum, I think the rise that you certainly see across a lot of countries of things like populism are really symptoms of a much larger problem. And that problem comes down to, I think, two things. It's access to information, and it's understanding. And I think as engineers and as software developers and UX designers, we are kind of uniquely positioned to help improve the state of how this stuff works. If you think about like public data, the first thing that comes to mind is it's not exactly the easiest stuff to look at or use or the easiest stuff to try to wrap your head around. Yet we'll spend a lot of time in industry making like ad analytics really easy to understand and grasp, which is what made me think of this quote from Jeff. He's one of the co-founders of Cloudera and was a quant on Wall Street before he founded Cloudera. So I wanted to highlight just a couple of things, then I have an extremely brief demo, and then I'll be done. There is a wealth of information already out there that's really accessible. Something I didn't know till like 2 weeks ago, the United States has a GitHub org. Go figure. And there is a ton of stuff already available under this org. A lot of these tools run in Docker containers. So they're as accessible as like installing Docker and then doing Docker run and some command to pull down data. So here's another one, one particular one I found useful from the same org. This is all of the legislators that have ever served in Congress, current, going all the way back to the founding of the country. And it's as accessible as a Git clone. They have much more involved tools as well that you can use to track like progress of votes through legislature. And there's equivalent tooling I found like in the UK and in the EU. So some ideas, content analysis, applying things like TextRank, text indexing, sentiment analysis to statements that are made in Congress, to legal, the legal terminology in legislature. I found that some of this is actually open research problems. Like no one has actually found a great text summarization algorithm to apply in the legal domain, because the structure of the documents and the type of terminology that's used is so much different from like just standard colloquial English. Visualizations, stuff like voting trends by region, by party, by legislature, by topic, all that kind of stuff. These are all things that we already do in other domains and other contexts, and it just seems like it would be a great thing if we found some time to do this, for the public. So here is, where is my maximize? Yeah. All right, so this is something I've been working on in my spare time. And so this is based just on the data from those tools I showed you from the United States GitHub repo. This is also a Phoenix app, so I'm doing my part in doing like the Erlang Elixir thing. So you can pick, any state. Let's look at, say, well, I'm from North Carolina, so let's pick North Carolina. And so this shows you, this is pulling from census data. This shows you the bottom is the percentage of the population living at or below the poverty line. And the red line, you have to use the axis on the other side. That's the actual state population going back from 2000 up to 2016. And then this up here is the current senators and all the sitting representatives. But this is just getting started. But I feel like, when you show people information this way versus having to wait for, some crisis or some big movement to happen where that information comes out in the news, if people had an easier, kind of more intuitive way to access this information, it just seems like it would be a really nice thing to have. That's it.